Speaking of the Hall of Fame, this is a wild story. Jerry Lawler, who hosted the ceremony again this year, he's sort of the master of ceremonies every year, and he even did commentary at WrestleMania with Jim Ross for the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. I'm going to talk about Andre here in a little bit. He'll also be doing commentary. Now, my understanding is he's doing commentary for the entire show. Him and Jim Ross both are calling the greatest Royal Rumble show in Saudi Arabia, because they're loading that thing up big time, as you'll see when I run down the card here in a second. And I guess they wanted JR and the King, for old time's sake. They're going to, be calling the entire show. So Lawler's had some responsibilities of late in WWE. And he almost missed out, because on his podcast this week, he revealed that only a few weeks before WrestleMania, he suffered a stroke while having sex with his fiancée. Lawler is, I want to say Lawler is 68. His fiance, I knew his fiance was young. I didn't realize she was this young. Apparently she's only 29. Hey, there you go. But yeah, had a stroke while having sex. And after they finished the deed, there's a mental image for you. He said something to her that didn't seem to make sense. And she looked at him and she noticed that the right side of his face, the right side of his mouth was drooping. And she said, "Oh my God, look in the mirror." And he looked in the mirror and he saw it. And she said, "You're having a stroke." He couldn't speak. So she rushed him to the hospital. They discovered that he had suffered a brain hemorrhage. And in the hospital, they were asking him basic questions. What's your name? Who's the president? And he could not answer any of those questions. And the doctor said, "Look, it could be 6 months before you're able to speak normally again. It could be a year. It could be never. This may be, look, you're an older guy. This could be permanent. You had a stroke." Now, this all happened on March 21st. That's when he was rushed to the hospital and the initial diagnosis was made. 21st, okay? He woke up on the morning of the 25th, only 4 days later, and was speaking normally again without any explanation. They were asking him the same questions. He was able to answer them normally. He was showing no ill effects or lingering effects from the stroke. Doctors were baffled. And he was able to fulfill all of his duties over WrestleMania weekend. He hosted the entire Hall of Fame. He did commentary. He did other interviews. So that's pretty scary. That is very, very scary. And who's to say that something like that won't happen again, right? Who's to say that he won't wake up next week and have the same symptoms? I hope not. So it's very, very scary. I'm glad he's okay. But you know what? If you're going to have a stroke, having one while having sex sounds a lot better than just waking up that way, right? So if you're gonna if it's gonna happen, I can't think of a better way or a better time for it to happen. That's the best I could say about it. But hopefully he's okay. That's scary stuff. You got Jim Ross, who had like 3 different bouts of Bell's palsy, and one of the symptoms of Bell's palsy, it's not a stroke really, but it kind of in a way mirrors some symptoms of a stroke. And we all know that JR had the paralysis of the face, and in his case, it never went away, and it only got worse. His face became even more paralyzed with the subsequent bouts that he suffered. And I don't know that that's really all that common. I had, my aunt, who I'm very close with, and some of the only family I have left now, she had Bell's palsy a number of years ago. Just randomly woke up one morning and had the paralysis partial paralysis of the face. And the doctor said, "Look, there's nothing to really do. It's going to clear up on its own." And sure enough, 6 weeks later, her face was back to normal. Unfortunately for Jim Ross, that was never the case. So when it comes to things like this, it's just so scary that you go to bed one night, or I guess in Lawler's case, you're doing something else, and then you sort of wake up and all of a sudden, you can't feel half your face and you just feel powerless. What do you do in a situation like that? You just wait and hope that it goes away. And in Lawler's case, it did.